So often what you'll hear in the head of a tune when the horn players aren't playing is the piano player will do some fills. So listen to this. Here's a fill right here. And then back to the top of the tune. So what is a lead sheet? It is a simplified notation in jazz to give musicians a general sense of melody, rhythm, harmony, and even form in order to interpret a piece of music. It's musical shorthand, if you will, or a blueprint on what to actually play versus writing everything out. It's very difficult to notate in jazz because it's an improvised music, so giving musicians a lead sheet in jazz is the typical thing to do, but you're going to want to know what to do. We're going to focus on the tune Freddie the Freeloader from Miles Davis' Kind of Blue. It's a simple lead sheet, but by the end of the video, you'll learn how to interpret it and make it sound much better than just a simple melody and a bunch of chord symbols. In this case, we're taking a look at the lead sheet for Freddie the Freeloader, which is a very simple tune. Let me make it a little bit bigger. And there's a few things that are shown in this lead sheet. Yes, it looks pretty simple, but again, it's up to the musicians to interpret the simplicity of it and make music out of it. So let's take a look at what it actually shows. First, you'll have the melody, which you can see is here on the treble clef. Now, sometimes in lead sheets, you'll see a treble and bass clef. That's if more information needs to be shown. For example, some rhythms or bass notes in the left hand or for the bass player. But in this case, it's just a simple lead sheet drawn on the treble clef and you can see the melody there. It also gives the chord symbols. In this case, B flat, E flat, and every time you see a chord symbol, that's when you're supposed to play on that bar, that particular chord symbol. Sometimes you'll see a chord symbol halfway or 3/4 of the way through, like this one here, which means you'll play B flat 7 on beat 4. In addition to that, you'll see often rhythm notated. Now, if you're going to take a look at this particular lead sheet, you can see that the melody note is fairly simple, but it's sometimes easy to pick out rhythms. For example, this is 4 and 1. So often what musicians will do, especially when they're comping like piano players, they might actually play the chords on beat 4 and on the and of 4 as well, based on what the melody does. But also sometimes on a lead sheet, you'll see notation like this, where you've got this kind of stuff, where you basically notate rhythms. They're not actually notes. And also, it gives you the form. In this particular case, 12 bar blues with a repeat. So you've got a repeat sign here, so play those 12 bars and then take the first time ending and then play the next 12 bars, take the second time ending. Now, the first thing the band needs to do is to interpret that and make music out of that as a group. So what I did was transcribe the Miles Davis version from the album Kind of Blue. I didn't write everything out, but I'm going to give you an idea of how musicians might interpret this particular tune. So I've written out the melody, and actually let's make this a little bit bigger too. So you can see the melody is here on this line, and then up here we've got piano notated. So this is what Wynton Kelly played on the album, and I'll play this for you in a second. And then down here you've got the bass. Now I didn't write any drum parts or anything like that. I'm just giving you basic information here on how to take a lead sheet and turn it into a piece of music that is an arrangement. Also, on top of this, you'll find that there's a couple of horns, for example, tenor and alto, and then also the trumpet on top of it. Let's take a look at the actual recording that I did. I transcribed everything, put it into my digital audio workstation and created a digital version out of this, and then I played piano over top of it. A little bit later on, I'm going to give you a link to download this actual version so that you can play along with it. And I'll give you a link to the sheet music so that you can understand what Wynton Kelly does. But let's hear how the band would sound when you put that arrangement together. Okay, now let's talk about the piano player's role specifically when working with a band and a lead sheet. All right, just before we go any further, if you like this video, please reach down, give it a little thumbs up with your mouse. That really helps the channel when you do that. And of course, if you'd like to subscribe, we'd love to have you here on the Jazzmentl channel on YouTube. Just hit the little bell when you subscribe and we'll notify you of all the upcoming videos that we're making. All right, let's get back to it. Let's assume in this particular case that you're working with more than just a piano trio. In this case, you've got trumpet and a couple of horn players. So when Wynton Kelly plays, what he does over the head section is he does what's called an answer. So Miles Davis would play the call on the trumpet, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's the answer by Wynton Kelly. So one more time. So typically what he does is he waits for Miles to play the melody and then follows it up with some kind of answer. So often what you'll hear in the head of a tune when the horn players aren't playing is the piano player will do some fills. So listen to this. Here's a fill right here. And then back to the top of the tune. So typically the piano player, when the head is playing, they'll do a couple of things. One, they'll comp some chords behind the soloists, and two, they'll make some fills. In this particular case, Wynton Kelly doesn't just comp, but he does some melody to answer the call from Miles Davis and the other horn players. All right, then we get into the solo section, and in the solo section, it's the piano player's job to do several things. First, when another musician is playing, the piano player will do some comping. And comping essentially means that you'll play the chords behind the rhythm section in some interpretive way that makes the horn player sound better. One thing to keep in mind when there's a horn solo is that the piano player will typically try to accent the and of 4 and the and of 2. For example, here we've got 4 and leading to the next bar, and then a dotted quarter note, and then the and of 2. And continuing like this. Now, the piano player won't always do that. That's just a guide in order to play along with the musicians in a way that keeps it swinging. Let's play along with just bass and drums, and let me give you an idea of what the and of 4 and the and of 2 sounds like. So you can hear the piano player is just playing sparsely, just keeping the chords going, obviously playing some inversions of those chords. And we talk about more comping in other videos on the Jazzmentl channel. You might want to check some of those out. Okay, let me give you a more complex idea of what comping would sound like. So in addition to playing the and of 4, the and of 2, the piano player is playing a few rhythms. So this is me performing here. So I take some liberties with the rhythms. Yeah, there's no soloist, so I'm not really hearing anything to bounce off of. I'm not getting any ideas from the soloist. I'm just basically playing as if there were a soloist and trying to help them through the tune. Now I'm playing chords, rhythms, and of 4, and of 2, but I'm also making little fills here and there. So let's listen to that would sound like. that's basically how a piano player or I would interpret comping for a blues tune, in this case, Freddie the Freeloader. Now, depending on what the soloist is playing, I'm going to basically get some ideas from them and help them out a little bit with their solo. The next thing that you need to know is how to improvise over a lead sheet. Now, of course, we've been given the chord changes, and we've been doing some improvisation already. You can tell that in the comping where I'm playing little melodies and chords and things like that. That's all improvised. It's all pulled from the chord symbol that's displayed at the moment, in this particular case, blues. But when it comes to solos, then the piano player has to stretch a little bit and play typically melodies with the right hand and left hand comping. So what you'll see in this particular case is I'm playing chords with my left hand very sparsely and playing melodies with the right hand that comes from the bebop language. Let's listen. So right, you can see that I'm basically coming up with some right hand soloing ideas, comping along with the right hand and the left hand. Sometimes the left hand is playing without the right hand, and a lot of times the right hand is playing without the left hand. It's kind of how they fit together. But that's how a musician or a piano player would interpret a lead sheet, especially in the solo section. Let me put a link to the sheet music and the backing track up here in the corner. So there's a lot going on here. There's the lead sheet that I'm going to give you. Then I'm going to give you Wynton Kelly's background to the head section where he's doing this. It's very hard to find that online. In fact, I couldn't find a version of it anywhere, so I had to lift it myself. So that's part of the download. In addition to that, I'm going to give you the backing track, which is the entire band playing that you heard earlier. It essentially sounds like this one more time. When the solo section comes, there's a few choruses that you can practice your comping and your soloing. And if you're looking for another beginner piano video, I've got plenty of them to share with you. I suggest you go check this one out. It's essentially how to play seventh chords, a lot of which were in this tutorial today. So go check that one out. It's going to be very useful to you.